Hi there, it's Protest Mom. I'm in chambers of the City Council, where as usual, absolutely no one is here, except for one person working like she always does. And I just found out that those cowardly chicken shit motherfuckers literally, just now, pulled the Starr Amendment out of contention based on the mayor's letter. Now, all of you know that what we've been fighting for, what we've been pushing for, defunding police means reallocating money away from police to solve community issues that matter to us, problems that the police don't need to be solving, like addiction, mental health, and homelessness, and being black. We tend to criminalize that when we shoot black people for being black in the wrong place at the wrong time. So Starr comes in and does that thing that the police aren't qualified to do, don't do well, and should no business doing. And your city council just pulled the amendment. That would make that possible. How much does that change everything that we're doing tonight? $3 million.
But then I have multiple amendments that
yes, we've been talking about those.
Divert dollars from DP into community stuff, so we'll see.
But if they pull that amendment, does that pull your amendments because they've got nothing to attach to? Okay, good.
It doesn't pull my amendments, but if they made a concession on that one, they're unlikely to support any of mine, which I didn't expect in the first place. But I'm doing what people have asked me to do, and I have the duty.
They do too. Yeah. Which is, if they were doing their duty instead of a duty, I would be home with my kids.
Agreed.
Fuck them. Fuck them, and fuck you, Jolyn Clark. Hi, Jolyn Clark. Fuck you. I can't wait to tell you fuck you to your face when we get started with public comment. So Candi Baca is here, and there's no one here but me. Wall of Moms is outside with Tay Anderson, setting up. Tay Anderson, by the way, who is the elected head of the Denver School Board. He works for free and keeps our kids safe, and we love him, and he's amazing and wonderful, and he himself used to be homeless. He can speak directly to the needs that mutual aid societies are fulfilling at the moment, that doing the work that city council refuses to do with the tax dollars we have given them to invest in our communities. So if you would like to hear an impassioned statement about what these little tea light candles and the things that we're making means to the unhoused, please come to 1431 Bannock Street. Outside the city and county building, you will find Tay Anderson and a big setup for our Wall of Moms and Dump. Dump is another mutual aid society that will come in and teach it. They teach us not only how to make the little tea lights and the candles that can warm up an entire tent for an unhoused individual, but also the insulation that they need in the winter to protect them from the concrete, which will hold cold a whole lot longer than you might think if you were to think about it at all. You know who does have to think about it? People who sleep on concrete because they have nowhere to go, because the fucking mayor is diverting funds that could be used to help them to businesses and nonprofits that don't do anything other than make our city look good, counting on more tourism that will not be coming in the middle of a goddamn pandemic, which is still happening. Yay! If that sounds like a terrible use of your tax dollars, please, for the love of Christ and country, come show up and say something here at City Council. This is where we have been complacent, and why I have to be here and scream is because white people have not done our duty of holding electeds accountable. Instead, we hold poor people accountable. We hold black people accountable. We say this wouldn't have happened to you if you'd done the right thing. We've been holding accountability everywhere other than where it needs to be, which is in the halls of power. Your elected officials who are paid $125,000 a year each to ignore you. I'm not okay with that. So I'm sitting in their seat without underwear on, and I'm probably going to pee on it before I leave. Fuck you. Who sits next to you? Who sits here? I'm definitely peeing here before I leave. In this seat. There we go. Whoop. It's me and my BFF hanging out together, doing cool stuff. You could be here too. If you wanted, it'd be awesome. I'm just saying, April Anderson is coming. April Alexander. I have a friend named April Anderson, and I always confuse them. So Dr. Alexander, Dr. April, her Lord and Highness, the Royal Queen Beyonce, Dr. April Alexander, will be joining us a little bit later. I believe Carrie Joy will as well. If you have not voted yet, please do that. Please do that. Please do that. Vote, vote, vote. And that's Therese. Here we go.
This 300,000 is extended from being something that folks with housing are used to getting, to being something that folks without housing should have a basic right to. We are currently spending somewhere around at least $10,000 per week for just the police budget.
For trash, instead of addressing that very basic need through providing that service. This $300,000 is a drop in the bucket compared to the funding that is already going towards pushing people from block to block instead of addressing the real public health need of folks who are living outside. Furthermore, there's a proposal on the budget for master leasing housing. This is the most efficient and effective way right now that people can move from the streets and shelters into housing. Those housing units already exist. There's a rough estimate of at least 22,000 vacant apartments and houses in our city right now, according to real estate analysis, and probably somewhere around 20,000 or so people who are homeless, depending on what number you're looking at. The point in time is, of course, only 5,000 or 4,000, but we know that number is much, much larger. But even with a number that you're looking at of about 20,000, you're looking at a matchup there between vacant housing units and folks who are homeless. If we're looking at costs here, we are looking at a very efficient use of costs, whereby, for example, the 1,000 people that are currently staying in shelters, since there are another 1,000 that are shifted into the hotels at this time, those 1,000 people could live in housing that's master leased by the city for a year with the 20 million that's in this budget right here. That would entirely empty out our shelter system.
Thank you. That's the time we have, Trace. Next up, we have Nate Warner.
Can you see me? Can you hear me?
We can hear you. We can't see you.
Oh, you're good. Oh, yeah, all right. Well, my name's Nate Warner, and I currently.
Oh, Nate.
We lose Nate.
You are back muted.
Oh, I just hate it when white men can't say what's on their minds.
Oh, can you hear me?
Go ahead, Nate.
Okay, all right. There you go. I'm sorry. Oh wow. So I'm currently one of the homeless residents here.
This white man can speak all day.
I stay on the streets because I prefer the streets over the shelters and the way they treat us. You got three types of people that work there. People that want to be there to help you. People that are just there for a check.
Same place where I sat with you and Nikki
people that
last time.
think they're better than me. And so it's very hard to live at those shelters. I have lost everything I owned due to being hospitalized. Okay, so here's the thing. If I'm going to be hospitalized and you know it, why are you throwing my stuff away? Medications, paperwork, all that stuff. And then I'm not just the only one. I could go on and on. The list goes on and on. So, it's housing, not harassment is what I'm looking for. Not a handout, a hand up. Because if I can get out of this state of being, of living, I guarantee you I can host a job. Not one that I used to be able to, because physically I'm not allowed to anymore, but that comes with age. But I'm just saying something, and then I can live somewhere and be a part of society. But even with the cops pushing and all that stuff, it makes it harder for us, not just me, us, to get up off of our feet. It's kind of hard. So what are we supposed to do? We're just, we're living like you asked. Most of us clean up. The ones that don't get kicked out, but that's besides the point. The point is stop harassing us, and we won't harass you. And what I mean by you, I mean by a riot. Because I'm not the one that's going to start it. And neither is somebody else that is the same homeless level as I am. It's new people becoming newly homeless. And there we go. Well, thank you for everything. Guess we got 20 seconds left. Oh, what I said helps. And by the way, people are afraid of dying out here.
Yeah.
I've heard that.
Yep. We're afraid too, and we hate it. I know. There's absolutely no excuse for this. It is
Thank you,
deplorable. Actually, City Council.
Next up, we have Andrew Block.
Yay, Andrew.
Good evening.
We like
Wow,
Andrew Block. He says good
I
stuff.
just want to thank Nate for sharing that with us, because I wanted to come in here tonight and apologize. Actually, I know I bit a little bit last time I spoke before you, but that's because I'm scared. I'm a scared citizen, and I'm looking out at a city where people are in crisis. They were in crisis before COVID, but now some 16% of families have filed for unemployment, and mostly low-income people, mostly people who are already vulnerable, and they're looking at missed rent, missed bills, and increasing anxiety around how they're going to support their families. And as Nate said, there's a lot of newly homeless, and there will be increasing numbers of newly homeless. And the city of Denver is going to have to make a choice about how we're going to deal with this problem. Because it is a problem. It is a problem that our neighbors are living on the street. And unfortunately, that choice isn't something we can punt down the road any longer. The choice is right here and right now. The choice is this budget. It's here in front of you. Because the mayor's budget, as it stands, is aggressively funding our law enforcement. And our law enforcement criminalizes poverty. It criminalizes homelessness. And when the many, many families that exist in Denver right now fall through the cracks because they lost a job, or their family gets sick because they have to work,
Then the truth of the matter is they're being
what's
pushed
gonna
through the
happen?
cracks
What's gonna happen to
intentionally.
them? The plan now is to
Callously.
put them in a jail cell and mark them with a criminal record that will impact their ability to get employment, to get housing, to create a stable life for themselves. And Nate, I know that you would be a productive, awesome member of Denver if you were given the opportunity, if you were just allowed a chance to get your foot in. But it's so hard when we are constantly seeing minimum budget lines for supporting people and supporting their basic stability, and maximum budget lines for incarcerating them for the slightest misstep. And these things follow them around for their lives. And now I'm watching it happen
My
to kids.
pleasure.
I'm a teacher. I see it happening in real time. And this isn't just going to be a problem for the next year or two as we're dealing with the fallout from the recession. This is going to be generational. I have students who right now are learning with their 2-year-old baby sisters in their laps because both of their parents are essential workers and they have to go to work. And so their 11-year-old kid is babysitting the younger siblings while they're trying to learn. That's going to impact them for the rest of their lives. So when you're thinking about how to allocate our resources tonight, and you're considering new amendments, please choose ones that will lift these kids up and make their futures better instead of preparing for them to fail. Thank you.
We're betting, daring them to fail, betting on their failure.
Jess Widerholm.
Jess!
Go ahead, Jess.
Hi,
Jess!
my name is Jess Wiederholtz. I live
Jess!
in District 5 with my husband and my 7 kids. And since early September, I've been showing up to support our houseless neighbors during the sweeps by Mayor Hancock. I homeschool my kids, and I'm the executive director of an international nonprofit. But of utmost importance to me is also taking care of the most vulnerable in our community. It only took attending one sweep to understand how unjust it was to be doing this during a global pandemic. I can imagine it might be easier to complain about the sights of homelessness when you've not met your neighbors. Each day that I have come to offer my mom van as support to move folks, I have been blessed to get to learn their beautiful stories. After a sweep, I spent hours with Corey, finding him a place where he would feel safe after he experienced trauma and violence at many of the shelters in our city. I found out that Corey was a trained chef. My daughter and I helped him set up his new site until 10 p.m. at night. On another day, I met Malik, who was sleeping on a mattress with no shelter as weather in our city was getting colder each night. I learned about his dream to own his own barbecue food truck. I was able to help him get the proper lotion, shoes, and socks for his aching, swollen feet. Those are just two of our incredible neighbors who are living in our city's streets because no other options are available to them. I've had the honor of working alongside Denver Homeless Out Loud and so many amazing Denverites offering mutual aid each week to meet the needs of our neighbors. Why? Because it's urgent. Because we're in the middle of a pandemic and these are the most vulnerable people in our city. Because it seems like our mayor and those with the power to change things don't care. I keep wondering how this could be true. Every day during their prayers, my kids ask God to give wisdom to those in power to help their houseless neighbors. And yet week after week, there are still no solutions.
Pray for that.
I told my kids we won't give up advocating for our friends. We will beg our city council members to come alongside us in meeting these needs.
Not gonna beg.
We need our city council to work together with urgency to provide funding for porta potties, hand washing stations, trash services, and water for all of our neighbors living in outdoor encampments. Our neighbors deserve 100% of our efforts to provide them the best possible solutions for housing, and most of all, ending the urban camping ban during this pandemic. Our city budget would be better spent on housing and sanitation resources rather than police sweeps. We have to stop criminalizing the poor. Let's work together, council, to meet the needs of the most vulnerable in our community, as you know we should. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Anna Cornelius.
Hi, my name is Anna Cornelius, and I live in the City Congress Park neighborhood. I'd like to remind City Council as we look at these budget amendments that in the early days of the George Floyd protests that City Council made many comments in support of the needs to defund the police and move that money into community needs. So I'm going to talk about two amendments that will give you the opportunity to do just that. First, I'd like to talk about the trash services for houseless encampments. People living in homes get trash services provided by the city. They get both receptacles and service. I'd like to remind all of City Council that the unhoused are also residents and members of our community, and it is still your responsibility to provide those services to them as well. In addition to trash can servicing, people must be paid to do the additional cleaning at some sites where there's a lot of traffic or people living there who need additional support. Currently, the Triangle Works crew hires people who are homeless to do this work on the city streets. I would like to see this program expanded and focus on encampment cleaning assistance at sites that need this additional support. Again, this funding is only $300,000, which is a drop in the bucket compared to the millions dedicated to the police. The other amendment that I'd like to talk about is the master leasing of properties citywide. There are currently at least 22,000 vacant units in Denver. The point in time count put our unhoused at 5,000. We have the resources to house our unhoused community members right now, but our elected officials are choosing not to do this.
Disgusting.
The city has the ability to master lease housing and rent it back at affordable rates. This is the most efficient way to house people without existing housing. You don't like to see people living in tents on the street? House them. You want to make it comfortable for tourists to come to our city? House the unhoused. City funds are currently being used to sweep people to nowhere, but these funds could be used for solutions like master leasing existing units rather than, as the CDC would state, increasing the potential for infectious disease spread, which is definitely not what we want to be doing in the pandemic. We don't want to be leading in the wrong direction. So I urge you all to vote yes on both of those amendments. Thank you. I don't need the other 26 seconds.
All right, thank you, Anna. Next up, we have Alejo Gonzalez.
Good evening. My name is Vallejo Gonzalez. I am a CWA 37074 member, union organizer,
Okay, you're safe,
captain of
Carol.
the Democratic Party. And I'm sorry that I'm in the car right now. I've been doing lit drops all day for the important election we have tomorrow. One thing I wanted to bring up was a really powerful story that I heard from one of my sisters in my union on a conversation they had with a voter. This voter was pro-Trump, and they were pro-cop, and they didn't see any problem in voting for Trump. My sister in my union is a DACA recipient and asked that Trump supporter if they knew someone who had DACA. And they actually did, their neighbor, as a matter of fact. And so she told them, you know, Trump's trying to get rid of DACA, right? And that person had no idea. That person did not realize that voting for Trump was going to pretty much move this neighbor who they thought was a hardworking American out of the country they grew up in.
How did they not know that?
I think that's powerful because I want to say that the amendments coming tonight seem to come from a place where a lot of conversations have been had, a lot of difficult ones, and city council seems to be listening.
I appreciate it. We all need to be showing up as much as we possibly can because this is fuck shit.
And brought up my disappointments and my frustrations with this body, but I want to say that these amendments have shown me and given me some hope that this body.
It's fun for me to show up and curse at people. I don't understand why more white women don't do it.
The historic uprising across the country as a moment to engage the citizens, not turn them down, not shut them up. And I urge you all, please keep the urgency. We do not need more dead black and brown bodies in the street from these racist institutions that are being upheld. I ask you all to please be the leaders that we voted for and support these initiatives that the people have brought. And with
the most frequently ticketed person was a homeless man named Danny Monk, who police cited nearly 100 times since March for 199 supposedly pandemic-related violations.
My name's Diana Roselle, and
homeless
I live in
person
Heights, which is the first district. And forgive me, I have a bit of a sore throat right now. So like all of you, I have no idea when times will stop being unprecedented. But I did think since we're all in this public health crisis that we could talk about something that is precedented, which is this council looking out for the people of Denver. And I'm just talking about the amendments that we're looking at tonight for the budget, which is the type of stuff that I think causes people to join city council in the first place. Creating community spaces, helping people with housing and rental support, public health and safety, and putting trash cans on the corners. These things all materially impact the lives of the people of Denver.
They do.
You have the opportunity to vote for all of these tonight.
Yep.
Meanwhile, all summer long, our friends, family, our neighbors have marched in support of the dignity of every human life. And against the rising tide of police brutality and state-sanctioned violence. Our police officers responded to this movement with unjustified, indiscriminate, and misused force. And this is just what we can see now that we can film them and share it online ourselves. Nearly blinding a student by shooting him in the head with a rubber slug, shooting pepper balls at a man and his pregnant wife, launching tear gas, which, as you likely know, is considered a chemical weapon and is banned by the Geneva Convention for use in warfare, using it on our crowds of citizens. Spraying pepper spray into a crowd from a vehicle. And our officers are learning that our body cameras are always on. So to all of you, I want you to consider that the funding that you allocate towards the police department.
Oh, if you mean them doing it as
BS,
then I'm with you. You're calling him BS. Fuck
on our friends, our family, and on our neighbors. I hope you all instead, with your votes tonight, decide to direct that funding towards community support programs that will actually help those in Denver who are just hanging on through this pandemic. We need your help. So I want to ask you, will you offer a hand or a boot?
A boot. They're going to get the boot.
Thank you, Diana.
It's going to be a boot because no one's here. And know what? Did you email your reps? Did you click that link? It was a link to click.
Greg from District 8 up in Northeast Park Hill. First, I'd like to thank you for all the work you've done up to this point on the budget. from previous amendments, the ones coming up tonight, we know that the details of, it's clear that you understand that Denverites are hurting and in need of help more than ever in the midst of another sustained spike in COVID cases. It may not be apparent considering how often we've been showing up this year that we're big fans of this city, but I assure you that it's actually the opposite. I love this city. That's why I'm so adamant about pushing us to do everything in our power to keep our neighbors safe and secure for the entirety of this pandemic and the years after, which will likely be just as challenging. The eviction defense work we've been doing has brought me all over the city to every one of your districts, and it's clear that we need to be doing more. The communities hit hardest by the economic downturn associated with the pandemic are also those directly suffering the most from the virus itself, and sadly, this was all predictable and preventable. With no direct aid on the horizon, we must support every single amendment tonight that provides aid to these communities, whether it's immediate or long-term.
Yep.
Bringing equity to the people of Denver starts in how we plan our developments, how we ensure safe outdoor communal spaces are available with access to clean public restrooms, who we send when our neighbors are in need of help amidst a mental health crisis.
That is huge.
The list goes on and on. As a resident of Park Hill, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that the current iteration of the East Area Plan does not do enough to ensure.
I'd love to hear all about it. And
So all that being said, I hope you will vote for your constituents who are in the most need of a break right now.
Yes, it does.
In times like these, we should assess what the definition and scope of public safety is and continue to do what we can out here. And adjust accordingly, or we'll continue down the road of making the same mistakes over and over. We'll continue to do what we can out here, but it sure would be nice to have some more direct support from this council. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
It'd be nice if they like
speaker is Clarence Mills.
listened. I don't know.
Hey, thanks for affording me the time to talk tonight.
Stop thanking them. You paid for this time.
I work as a researcher in the Colorado biotech industry, and I live in the Baca neighborhood of Denver. And I just am here tonight to advocate for two of the amendments on the budget.
For real, why are we still being nice? Why?
The reallocation of funds to provide sanitary services to the houseless encampments, and also the allocation of resources towards the master leasing program. I think one of the main lessons of the pandemic that we should have learned by this point in America is that our carceral approach to various societal issues, we warehouse the elderly, we warehouse those we deem criminal, we warehouse those without homes, we warehouse those without immigration status. And that has proven to be extremely deadly, not just for those populations, but for the entire populace at large. And sorry, I'm a bit nervous and a bit distracted. But, I don't think it's our approach to houselessness in Colorado has never been good, and during the pandemic, it's been worse. I mean, we're really focusing our efforts on pushing people into these mass congregate shelters, which is extremely reckless in the middle of a pandemic. And it isn't reasonable to expect that
it's extremely reckless all the time.
Death by literally risk death to go stay in these shelters, or risk death by being arrested if they don't go, or potentially catching on the street. And I think we have an obligation, not just to the people experiencing houselessness, but to the greater community at large, to provide real solutions. I mean, obviously the best solution to that would be to extend temporary, if not permanent, housing, and this could be done through the master leasing amendment. Mm-hmm. But at the very least, we need to be doing providing some sort of harm reduction programs, and one of those is providing real sanitary services to the encampments and allowing the encampments to exist rather than using hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to reshuffle people around the city, creating more COVID cases, spreading COVID between neighborhoods, and generally putting our population at risk. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jennifer Dillon.
Was that okay?
Hi, my name is Jennifer Dillon, Council District 8. Thank you so much for this opportunity to be heard. To all of the city council members who have responded to the national outcry to reimagine policing and defund police departments in the face of the over-policing and often violent policing of our Black and Indigenous and Brown neighbors, with amendments to the mayor's budget that divert money from the police department, I just want to say sincerely, thank you. Thank you for being responsive, proactive, creative, and anti-racist. And thank you for being leaders. To the members who couldn't find or imagine touching one penny of the police budget, despite the evidence of racist policing here in Denver and across the country, I don't believe history will look kindly on you for entrenching this unacceptable status quo.
I don't know.
To my knowledge, there are 4 amendments
Why are we still being
tonight
nice?
that are being proposed on the table that propose diverting a small percentage of the police department budget towards projects that strengthen our communities and actually make them safer. The comments I had about most of these amendments have already been covered by other speakers more eloquently than I could manage, and I encourage you to vote to pass all 4 of them. But I will limit my comments to focus specifically on the amendment regarding the STAR program. This program diverts 911 calls that pertain to substance abuse, mental health, or people who just need to be connected to services away from armed police response and towards paramedics and social workers. And this is a really exciting program, and I'm very pleased that both the mayor and the city council deem it to be worthy of investment. The STAR program directly reduces the workload of the police department. It only makes sense that the money for this program should come from the police department. Funding the STAR program, as the mayor proposes, with money outside the police department, in effect increases the police department budget. And I don't think that's something that we want to be seen doing, and that we need, definitely not what we need to be doing. And I'll limit my comments there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jennifer. That concludes our general public comment session. In these times of social change, it's critical that members of the public have more opportunities to be heard by leaders at all levels of government. Our next general public comment session will be held before the meeting of council on Monday, November 9th. Sign-up begins at 12 noon on Friday, November 6th. Thank you all for attending. Your city council looks forward to hearing from you again. Please stay on this meeting to attend the next regular session of Denver City Council. We need a couple of minutes for us to switch over from this recording to the council recording. And so we'd just like to remind my colleagues to stop their videos and mute their mics until we start the council meeting. Thank you.
Well, here we are. Sounds like I didn't make public comment, but that doesn't mean I have to shut my mouth. Y'all want to hear what I got to say about this? Let's do it. Trigger warning before I get going. The story I'm about to tell may invoke imagery of animal cruelty. I'm not sure. One year when I was coming home to Tennessee during a college break, a friend offered to set me up with somebody. He's just like you, she said. Now, I'm self-aware enough to know that that is not a compliment. So I said I wanted to speak to this fella on the phone first. Right off the bat, he whispers, "I'm gonna fuck you like a bunny rabbit." I didn't know what he meant by that, and I sure didn't go on the date to find out. I still get a little bit queasy when I think about it. I felt violated and threatened and scared all at once. I cannot imagine saying that to another human being. And that is why I implore you to approve every single one of Candi Baca's budget amendments. This budget looks at the impoverished, the unhoused, people of color, people with disabilities, and effectively promises to fuck them like bunny rabbits. We are cutting desperately needed services and societal supports while betting on tourism and revenue to bail us out in the middle of a pandemic. We know that isn't going to happen. We expect more poverty, which is why we just can't cut the police budget, because poor people steal things. And this is proof that the mayor's counting on all of this. The threat to our society is not our most vulnerable. It's the privilege to think that the most vulnerable chose this life, that they chose struggle, that they are morally inferior and do not deserve actual protection. I am not respecting the Star Spangled Banner. No. We need to protect these people. We are better than this. That's not true. We are not better than this.
Have you mute your mics, and please
But
join
we can
Council
be.
Member Seda Baca as she leads us in the Denver City Council land acknowledgement.
I wouldn't shut my mouth for anyone but her.
The Denver City Council honors and acknowledges that the land on which we reside is the traditional territory of the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho peoples. We also recognize the 48 contemporary tribal nations that are historically tied to the lands and make up the state of Colorado. We honor elders past, present, and future, and those who have stewarded this land throughout the generations. We also recognize that government, academic, and cultural institutions were founded upon and continue to enact exclusions and erasures of Indigenous peoples. May this land acknowledgement demonstrate a commitment to working to dismantle ongoing legacies of oppression and inequities and recognize the current and future contributions of Indigenous communities in Denver.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Madam Secretary, roll call.
Black.
Here.
Seda Baca.
Here.
Clark.
Here.
Fuck you.
Herndon.
Hate you, Clark.
Hines.
Here.
Cashman.
Nice tie, Hines.
Kinich.
Here.
Ortega.
Here.
Sandoval.
Here.
Until this.
Here.
Torres.
Here.
Flynn.
Here.
Madam President.
Here.
Thank you.
13 members present.
There are 13 members present. Council has a quorum. Approval of the minutes. Are there any corrections to the minutes of October 26th? Seeing
Here we
none, the
are.
minutes
Sounds
stand
like
approved.
I didn't make
Council
public comment.
announcements.
But that
Are there
doesn't
any
mean I have to shoot.
announcements? Councilman Herndon?
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to request a 1-hour courtesy public hearing to be held on Monday, November 16th, and on second reading or final consideration of Council Bill 20-1132 regarding the East Area Plan.
Thank you, Councilman. We're happy to accommodate that request. Councilwoman Torres?
Thank you, Madam President. Just two quick announcements. Santa Fe Drive is changing. Already there's been a reduction of lanes from 3 to 2 and greater flex room for pedestrians. Artist installation schedule for Santa Fe continues this week, Wednesday through Sunday, and they'll be working on the 9th Avenue intersection and the 12th Avenue intersection. And just thanks to Dottie for all this great work. And all of the communities and districts along Santa Fe Drive. And finally, it's Animal Shelter Appreciation Week, and I just want to thank the Denver Animal Shelter for all you do. You've added a number of family members to my family over the years. There's a donation button and a wish list on their Denver Gov web page if you'd like to give back. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Hines?
Thank you, Madam President. I think that probably anyone who's watching this tonight is aware that we have an election tomorrow. And although none of
We're
us
also
are
aware
up
that
for
we have some
election,
homeless
this is
people who need
really
help.
a critical,
Thank you.
critical election. So please do consider voting. Please do consider getting others out to vote.
Don't
This
consider it,
is,
do it.
A pivotal time in our country, and our democracy is stronger when we all participate. Thank you, Madam President.
And we can all participate
you,
when we make it
Councilman.
possible for the
Councilwoman
least of
Sederbach.
us to have a
Thank you, Madam
voice.
President. I am going to jump a little bit ahead because I'm doing a proclamation about Daddy Bruce in a little bit. But we have a GoFundMe up on our District 9 Facebook page to be able to support families in need of a Thanksgiving dinner. So if you can, please participate in this legacy and contribute. $35 feeds a family of 8. And so put your goodwill to in motion and help a family out. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Thank you, Candi. We love you and no one else.
Sandoval.
No one else.
Thank you, Madam Chair, or thank you, Madam President. Sorry. In Council District 1, we are working on a money drive for Bienvenidos Food Bank, and I am matching dollars up to $1,000. So if you would like to donate to Bienvenidos, please go to my Facebook or my newsletter.
Lord.
We'll be matching, and it's to help for Thanksgiving for the month of November, but we're also doing it all the way up until the end of the New Year's. So it will be the month of November and December. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilwoman. And I'll go ahead, seeing no other hands raised. Wanted to just remind folks that our COVID rates are going up in the city as it is across the nation, but want to remind folks to continue to mask up, and we have a bit stricter regulations now, and really as everybody creates their voting plan, and for tomorrow being election day, we really ask folks to stay at home. Go out and vote, take care of that. If you're giving somebody a ride to the polls, great. But
He's
then
just
after
like
that,
you,
we'd
she
really
said.
love if you would get home, hold steady, watch the returns, but we all know that we are most likely not to see the results of the election tomorrow. We won't know when we go to bed. And so we're asking folks to please hold steady and have patience with this process so that we can make sure that we're allowing our clerks and recorders across the United States to do the work that they have been elected to do, and to let this process play out the way that it is meant to. And so just asking folks to honor that and protect yourself at the same time. And we will go ahead and move on then. There are no presentations, there are no communications, and we have 2 proclamations being read this evening. Councilmember Black, will you please read Proclamation 1249 for us?
Yes, I will, Madam President. Thank you. Proclamation 20-1249 recognizes November as National Alzheimer's Disease Awareness Month and National Caregiver Month. Whereas in 1983, President Reagan designated November as National Alzheimer's Disease Awareness Month, and in 1997, President Clinton signed the first National Caregiver Month presidential proclamation recognizing and honoring family caregivers. And whereas Alzheimer's disease is a progressive neurodegenerative brain disorder that tragically robs individuals of their memories and leads to progressive mental and physical impairments, for which there is currently no prevention, treatment, or cure for the 47 million people around the world living with the disease. And whereas every 65 seconds, someone in the United States develops the disease, which translates to 76,000 Coloradans among the nearly 6 million Americans living with Alzheimer's disease. And whereas Alzheimer's disease is the 6th leading cause of death in the U.S., with a 157% increase in deaths from 2000 to 2018. And whereas the impact of Alzheimer's extends to loved ones of those with the disease, including 256,000 Colorado caregivers who provide unpaid care at the value of over $3.8 billion in 2019.
Here we are. Sounds like.
Whereas the annual cost to our country in total payments for health care, long-term care, and hospice for people with Alzheimer's disease is $305 billion. And whereas, according to the Alzheimer's Association, Latinos are 1.5 times more likely to develop Alzheimer's than older whites due to conditions like high blood pressure and diabetes, which increase the risk of developing Alzheimer's, while African Americans are twice as likely. And whereas the City and County of Denver recognizes the efforts of the Alzheimer's Association to raise funds and promote awareness to fight Alzheimer's disease and related disorders, thereby improving the quality of human life for those living with the disease and their care partners and bringing us closer to finding a cure. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Council of the City and County of Denver, Section 1, that the Denver City Council proclaims November 2020 as National Alzheimer's Disease Awareness Month and National Caregiver Month. Section 2, that the clerk of the City and County of Denver shall attest and affix the seal of the City and County of Denver to this proclamation, and that a copy be transmitted to Amelia Schaefer, Executive Director of the Alzheimer's Association of Colorado.
Thank you, Councilmember
Yeah,
Black.
Alzheimer's is terrible. I know this, but I would much rather hear conversation.
To adopt proclamation number 20.
That would help people with Alzheimer's. I don't know. Call me crazy.
It's been moved and seconded.
What's this proclamation do?
Councilmember Black.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, last week it was my 6th week having a proclamation for Diabetes Awareness Month, and tonight is my 6th year presenting this proclamation around Alzheimer's Awareness and Caregiver Month. Alzheimer's and finding a cure are very, very personal to me. 2 of my grandparents suffered from the disease, as did my mother, who tragically suffered for many years with Alzheimer's and passed away a few years ago. And I did care for my mother. And it's just really awful for the person who has Alzheimer's. And it's also really awful for the family and the caregivers. It really takes a toll on the soul of the family members, and it's an emotional and a financial hardship for families. Alzheimer's is a leading cause of death in Colorado. There was an article in the Denver Post this morning that the pandemic has led to a 26% rise in Alzheimer's deaths this year. The social isolation of Alzheimer's patients in care facilities has taken a devastating toll, and doctors are very concerned about the impacts of a 3rd wave of the coronavirus. 1 in 5 Medicare dollars is spent on Alzheimer's and other dementias, and the number of people with the disease is increasing rapidly. I wanted to help raise awareness by sponsoring this proclamation. If you know someone with dementia, a family member or a neighbor, please reach out to lend a hand or be a friend. Families of Alzheimer's patients also really need your support. If someone in your own family suffers from Alzheimer's, please use the resources of the Alzheimer's associations and other groups for support. No one person or family should have to go through this alone. There is no cure. You can help find one by supporting the Alzheimer's Association and other groups. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilmember Black, and thank you for bringing this proclamation forward and your ongoing advocacy for this and some of those negative impacts that we're seeing, how important it is for us to reach out to our family, friends, and neighbors so we can make sure and get them that support. And so thank you for doing that. Madam Secretary, roll call, please.
Black?
Aye.
Baca?
Aye.
Clark?
Aye.
Brendan?
Aye.
Time?
Aye.
Cashman?
Aye.
Kinich?
Aye.
Ortega? Sandoval?
Aye.
Sawyer?
Aye.
Torres?
Aye. Ortega's an aye.
Thank you, Councilwoman Ortega. Gwen?
Aye.
Madam President?
Aye. Madam Secretary, close the voting and announce the results.
13 ayes.
13 ayes, proclamation 1249 has been adopted. We have 5 minutes for the proclamation acceptance. Councilmember Black will start the 5-minute timer. If you'd like to introduce who will accept the proclamation.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to introduce Kristen Beatty, who is the board chair-elect of the Alzheimer's Association. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. First, can I just say I'm a huge Denver lover, and this is an honor and a thrill to participate in the city council meeting. So thank you for allowing us to come accept this, and thank you for approving the proclamation. We really, really appreciate that because, as you know, the number one challenge for any issue that needs to be raised is raising awareness, and this helps us raise awareness, and our team spends a ton of time trying to raise awareness, because with awareness comes advocacy, with advocacy comes fundraising, and with fundraising comes research that hopefully will help us find a cure. But also the most important part, and Council Member Black, thank you so much for being so eloquent in describing a lot of the things that we do. You helped me with my job this evening, is providing support for the caregivers. And I'm just going to tell you a little personal story about myself, as I think that'll really bring it home. I mean, you know that this disease does not discriminate, and that, you know,
No,
really
it doesn't.
famous people like Ronald
The
Reagan
unhoused
and
get
Glenn
it.
Campbell have passed from it. But just this Sunday, my father passed from Alzheimer's disease.
I am
And
really
he fought
sorry.
it for
That's terrible.
14 years.
People were
And,
shot by the police this weekend, and
community
some
that
unhoused
surrounded us,
neighbors
not
died.
only the paid but unpaid caregivers who watched over him, and the resources of
Talking
the
about unpaid
association to be
caregivers,
able
I'm
to
sitting in a
support my
room full of
family that
them.
are all free
People who
because
do
of the
mutual
fundraising.
aid on behalf of our
Was-
unhoused neighbors.
is hugely impactful and was really amazing part of our
The work
journey
that we do,
with my father.
they do,
I want to let you know
is
he was
impactful and
a
really
United
amazing.
States Air Force officer. He fought in
We're
Vietnam.
not getting
He
proclamations.
was a base
They're
commander
not asking
at
for
Lowry.
recognition.
He was the third commander before it closed.
They're asking for $300,000
So he's
for
also
trash
a VIP
disposal.
in my mind, and we are just so thankful for
$300,000
and for people like you who enable
The cost
us
of
to
5
raise
sweeps.
awareness for this important disease and help us find a cure, and help us also provide support to those caregivers, which is so important. So again, thank you for approving the proclamation. We are thrilled, and thank you for letting me be here this evening with you to tell my story.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Kristen, and we send our sincere condolences to you as well on the loss of your father, and we are very honored to have you join us here as well. And Councilmember Black, any final thoughts?
See you next year.
Fantastic. Yes, thank you so much for your continued support, Councilmember Black, and thank you, Madam President, as well, and thank you to everyone on the council.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up, Councilmember Seda Baca. Will you please read Proclamation 1262 for us?
Yay,
Thank you, Madam President. Yes, I will. Proclamation -20-1262, honoring the Daddy Bruce Randolph legacy. Whereas Elder King Harris and Reverend Ronald Wooding, formerly pastors of the Epworth United Methodist Church, are determined to continue the 56-year holiday tradition initiated in 1964 by Daddy Bruce Randolph of providing Thanksgiving baskets to Denver's less fortunate residents. And whereas the Daddy Bruce Legacy Foundation, the Epworth Foundation, the Epworth United Methodist Church, and Walmart sponsorship helped to continue the Denver Feed a Family Day event in honor of Daddy Bruce's food distribution, helping to strengthen and develop relationships with individuals, as well as with religious, business, and civic organizations to heighten awareness of the plight of many in our community. And whereas in this year, the COVID-19 pandemic has created an even greater need in our city, with more individuals out of work and seeking support to feed their families. And whereas each of the baskets distributed includes a turkey and all of the trimmings for a traditional Thanksgiving dinner for a family of 8. And this year, they will be distributed on November 24th at the Epworth United Methodist Church on Bruce Randolph Avenue. And whereas the film Keep a Light in Your Window which features many elected officials, religious leaders, corporate sponsors, civic organizations, volunteers, and food recipients sharing their memories of Daddy Bruce Randolph and their desire to support and continue his legacy of giving will reach thousands of individuals now and in the future. And Rocky Mountain PBS Channel 6 will air the documentary on November 19th at 8 p.m. Whereas, inspired by Daddy Bruce, hundreds of volunteers and donors give selflessly of their time, energy, and money to carry on this Denver humanitarian tradition of providing assistance to up to 10,000 families at this annual Thanksgiving event. And whereas Mayor Michael Hancock proclaimed November 21st, 2020 as Denver Feed a Family Day in honor of Daddy Bruce Randolph. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Council of the City and County of Denver that the Council of the City and County of Denver hereby honors and thanks all of those involved in their commitment to ensuring that the Denver tradition of caring for and assisting our communities less fortunate through direct food distribution, other means of support and aid, and encourages donations by the community to help continue this worthwhile effort. And that the clerk of the City and County of Denver shall affix the seal of the City and County of Denver to this proclamation, and that a copy be transmitted to Epworth Foundation.
Thank you, Councilmember Seda Baca. Your motion to adopt?
I move that proclamation 20-1262 be adopted.
It has been moved.
Second.
Thank you, Councilman Flynn. Comments by members of council? Councilmember Seda Baca?
Thank you, Madam President and colleagues, for hopefully supporting this tonight. This is a tradition that I have been participating in for 20 years. I know I don't look old enough for that, but it's because we started very young, and I have made it a tradition that we teach all of the young people involved in our life. This year is very different and very important, and I look forward to hearing from Reverend Wooding and King Harris about how to get involved this year. It may look different, but we have to keep this tradition alive. If there is a possibility to volunteer to pack boxes, I encourage every one of you to stop by and check it out. It's the most incredible sight you've ever witnessed. We set up a conveyor belt down Bruce Randolph in District 9. It's about 2 blocks long, and hundreds of volunteers line up on both sides and pack these boxes that we then hand deliver to people's houses. And so I encourage you all to join me, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilwoman, and appreciate your leadership and making sure that folks know that the history of this and how important it is for us to all continue and volunteer and help out with this initiative.
Well, you could also give them money.
Please.
You could also push back on the budget and give them money, bitch. Just a suggestion.
Aye.
Gilmore.
Clark?
Aye.
Brendan?
Aye.
Fine?
Aye.
Cashman?
Aye.
Kinich?
Aye.
Ortega?
Aye.
Sandoval?
Aye.
Boyer?
Aye.
Torres?
Aye.
Blackman?
Aye.
Black?
Aye.
Madam President?
Aye. Madam Secretary, close the voting and announce the results.
13 ayes.
13 ayes. Proclamation 1262 has been adopted. We have 5 minutes for the proclamation acceptance. Councilmember Seda Baca will start the 5-minute timer if you'd like to introduce who you'd like to accept the proclamation.
Thank you, Council President. I would like to introduce Reverend Ronald Wooding and King Harris.
I would like to introduce Reverend Ronald Wooding and King Harris.
All right, well, I saw Mr. Wooding there. We might just need to have you unmute yourself, sir.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Oh no, I lost my audio, my video. Is Pastor Harris here on? Yes, he's not on tonight. Okay, I guess I'll take the reins. It's good. It's always a pleasure to be here with City Council and to be able to accept proclamation. My memory is I think our first one that I received was when Carla Madison was in council, and she had brought it forth at that time. And of course, that's been quite a few years ago. But anyway, over the years, the Daddy Bruce Legacy Foundation and the Upward Foundation, we've worked together. My role, of course, has always been the legacy of Daddy Bruce. And I've heard quite a few names on the council that know that if you've ever talked with me, you know that I've mentioned Daddy Bruce to you, or and have asked you to help us out in some form or fashion over the years. And you have, and I thank all of you for doing that, because it's not just about Denver. We serve not just Denver alone, but Colorado Springs and a couple other cities outside Denver. So we are this year in a situation, of course, with the COVID pandemic. This year we're doing 10,000 homes, and that's about 70,000 people that will receive on Thanksgiving and during that week by receiving the food. Unfortunately, this year with the social distances and everything, we are not having anyone come and pick up any food. Everything is going to be delivered, so we're having no contact delivery where it's just put on the porch. So right now we're really pushing for volunteers to come and go from there. So this is, like I say, it's a labor of love. It's not something that we do. It's not a paid position or whatever. We've just been engrossed in it for these years, and it's always worked out. Last year, I think some of you know that I ended up going into the hospital during that time with diagnosis with cancer for a stem cell implant, and had to miss it. But by John, one of the TV stations, doing an interview with me before I went in, individuals came to the hospital and made donations, and some of them were large in size, and some were small in size, but that helped out tremendously as well. Of course, this year some of those same companies and same individuals have already made donations. So we always feel that we are blessed because we're doing something that's really needed in the community. And it's like, say, the history of Daddy Bruce. If you watch the documentary on November 19th, Keep a Light in Your Window on PBS Channel 6 at 8 o'clock, you'll see he was born, of course, 1900. So the biggest thing about his life for me was he was 63 years old when he came to Denver and started this feeding. And he said he wanted to be like Jesus, feed 5,000. Well, not only did he do that, but in many, many more over the years. Oops. So this year, like I say, we're doing 10,000, in his honor. And that's like I say, around 70,000, 80,000 people. So again, I thank all of you for continuing to support us. Thank Cia Baca for bringing this up again this year, because this is, like I say, not just one part of Denver. I mean, we have people from all over that receive food, and we are in the process this year. Like I say, food has been ordered. Now we just have to pay for it. So we will accept all donations from this point on. Thank you again for allowing us to participate with you tonight.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you, Councilman Cia Baca, for bringing this forward. And for folks, remember there's that GoFund site out there to raise money for this cause. And so thank you again for joining us. All right. The next agenda item is the mayor's proposed 2021 budget. And this is the last night council may offer amendments to the mayor's proposed 2021 budget. Councilmember Seda Baca, your first amendment to the budget, item 20-1255.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the mayor's proposed 2021 budget be amended in the following particulars. On page 596, in the line titled Chief of Police, reduce the amount in the 2021 recommended column by 1 million from 4,968,431 to 3,968,431. On page 600 in the titled Police Patrol Districts, reduce the amount in the 2021 recommended column by 1 million from 121,064,685 to 120,064,685. On page 247 in the line titled 21 recommended column by 2 million from 615,469 to 2,615,469 to increase funding for marijuana social equity collective development and make any other appropriate adjustments to comments, tables, schedules, and figures in the mayor's 2021 budget as may be required to reflect the actions in this.
Thank you, Councilwoman. It has been moved by you. May I get a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Torres. Questions or comments by members of council? Councilwoman Seda Baca.
Thank you, Madam President. Marijuana was deemed an essential business, preventing disruption of their business model. We've had less than 5 people of color owners in the state of Colorado throughout legalization here in our state. In Denver alone, we have almost 1,000 licenses, and less than 5 of those are people of color. We need to not only allow a social equity license, but facilitate the incubation of POC-owned licenses. Match amount that could be utilized to facilitate applications, etc. We know that finances are the top barrier for people breaking into this sector, and I believe that this amendment will give us an opportunity to truly deliver the possibility of equity in the industry.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I'm not seeing any other hands raised for questions or comments.
Aye.
No.
Clark.
No.
Fuck you, Clark. Fuck you hard, Clark.
No.
Cashman.
No.
Fuck you.
No.
Ortega.
No.
Fuck you.
Sawyer.
No.
Fuck you.
Torres.
No.
Fuck you.
Flynn.
No.
Fuck you.
Black.
No.
Fuck you.
Madam President.
No.
Fuck you.
Or, I'm sorry, I will, Madam Secretary, please announce the results of the vote.
1 aye, 12 nays.
1 aye, 12 nays. The amendment 1255 has failed. Councilmember Seda Baca, your second amendment to the budget, item 20-1256, please.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the mayor's proposed 2021 budget be amended in the following particulars. On page 591, in the line titled Police Patrol Districts Division, reduce the amount in the 2021 recommended column by $5,040,601 from $121,064,685 to $116,2484 on page 233 in the line titled Prosecution and Code Enforcement. Reduce the amount in the 2021 recommended
First one
column
failed.
by
12 nays.
$4,959,399 from $4,959,399 to $0. On page 411 in the line titled Housing Stability, increase the amount in the 2021 recommended column by $10 million from $102,293 to $10,102,293 to increase funding for increasing the city's affordable housing portfolio by allowing the city to lease properties citywide at affordable rates and make any other appropriate adjustments to comments, tables, schedules, and figures in the mayor's proposed 2021 budget as may be required to reflect the actions in this amendment.
Thank you, Councilwoman. It has been moved. Can I get a second, please?
Second.
Councilwoman Baca.
Thank you, Madam President. Pre-COVID Denver had an affordable housing crisis with disproportionate development of market rate and luxury housing. COVID's economic fallout had exacerbated housing insecurity for Denverites. Allowing the city to increase its affordable housing portfolio for severely cost-burdened households is essential to preventing future homelessness. It is very challenging for us to come up with a solution that does not require us to build. Building puts us way far out, years out from meeting our goals, and this allows us to house people immediately. In fact, the cost of doing this is similar to the cost of leaving people in shelters or leaving them in designated safe outdoor sites. And so I propose that we pass this amendment in order to put a roof over everybody's head in a very creative, innovative way that can be implemented immediately. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Hines.
Thank you, Madam President. Is someone from
Have someone on the call? If we have somebody from host here, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and introduce yourself.
I see Director Fisher has been promoted.
Yes.
So I guess I'll start with a question. So Director Fisher, I think you're the one I'm directing this question towards. Have you done an analysis of what you would do with the additional $10 million? Basically, your budget would be more than 100 times. Am I doing this right? 100. Don't do the math in your head. 100 times more than its existing budget. I just want to see what sort of analysis you've done with the additional funds that would go your way if this amendment were to pass.
Thanks, Councilman. I may have missed the very beginning of that question, but you're asking about what would $10 million do versus what's currently budgeted for bridge housing and master leasing?
Yes, I just noticed that your budget right now is 102,000, and so it would be 10 million, 102,000, and so anytime that there's a increase of 100-fold in a budget item, I just want to make sure that there's been some analysis and the effects of. Sometimes you get so much money you don't know what to do with it. I guess this is where.
I think we all know exactly what we do with money for the healthy unhoused because we've been begging for it. But thanks, real lots for asking.
Director of the Department of Housing Stability, and let me just clarify a couple of things about what we currently do and don't do when it comes to master leasing. So, number one, the City of Denver does not directly operate housing. The Housing Authority is the entity that directly operates public housing, and then we contract with both with the Denver Housing Authority as well as nonprofit and other partners to deploy housing resources.
So I just want to clarify that role in what we do right now. Secondly, we do deploy some resources for bridge housing, which is short-term housing to help somebody who's been identified for long-term housing, to help them get in housing while they are getting their documents and getting in everything in order to get into that longer-term housing. So that is right now 2 different organizations that get those funds. We served in 2020 in the contract. There's just over $1.6 million actually going to bridge housing. These are around 90-day stays, and sometimes less, sometimes more, that help people to transition into that longer-term housing unit. That $1.6 million serves about 420 households. So that's how we currently utilize the funds. We have not been engaged in a discussion about what the intention behind these amended funds were. That's what we currently do, but that's what I can tell you right now.
So no one asked you about $10 million and if or how you would utilize it?
We have not had that kind of conversation.
Okay, and then the first answer that you gave, you mentioned that other entities like Denver Housing Authority provide housing. Is that because of, are there ordinances in place, rules, or is that just a matter of how we've done things in the past, or why is there that separation?
Sure, happy to elaborate on that, Councilman. Basically, there's a part of state statute that talks about the relationship and powers of a housing authority versus a city. There's some interpretations around ownership of housing, but there has so far been the consensus that the city of Denver does not directly operate housing in the way that we have more sometimes direct relationships with shelter. So they're kind of different in that way.
So we certainly could engage our state colleagues, but we have no direct influence on that separation. We would have to get. It's not like we could just pass a law, a companion ordinance that would give us the authority to directly engage in housing. We would have to advocate at the state level, or get it, ask someone to get a law changed to the state level. Is that right?
So yes, Councilman, there would be further engagement needed on this. I would defer to our city attorney's office for any legal opinion. And in fact, Councilman Kniech has asked for a briefing on this very matter at an upcoming safety committee meeting.
Understood. Thank you, Director Fisher. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Kniech.
Thank you, Madam President. Ms. Fisher, I see you just turned your camera off, and I'm sorry. I'm sure you probably have a family you were hoping to get back to, but if I can follow up. So I know that for members of council who returned from the prior term, many of us spent many hours learning about a proposal that seemed really good, seemed very similar to this, which was there's empty units and there's people who need them. It should be really easy to hook up the two. And so a predecessor before Director Fisher set up a program called the LIVE program, and it is a partnership with Denver Housing Authority. And Director Fisher, can you share some of the challenges? Are there thousands of landlords willing to turn their units over to the city and county of Denver? First of all, let's just talk about that.
Fuck you.
To turn their units over to the city of Denver, that I don't think that's necessarily what we have asked for in the past, just to be clear. Like, we've always worked through another provider.
That's not how it works, for the record. She ought to know that.
Authority. Are thousands of landlords signing up to have their units being leased and controlled by the Denver Housing Authority?
No, they are not. You asked about challenges, and there are several. One is that property managers tend to turn over a bit, and we have found that with the Denver Housing Authority, they've reported that they develop those relationships, and then just when they're starting to get it going, then a property manager will change and then you have to re-educate and work with a new property manager. That's been particularly challenging. And it's really having to sell the program kind of door to door and find the landlords that are willing to engage with the Denver Housing Authority to set up that kind of structure where the rents are subsidized.
Thanks. And then I just wanted to ask about pricing. So we had a big debate about this as a city council when the LIVE program came through. I'm looking at some luxury rentals right now that may have this higher vacancy rate, $2,800 a month. Given our AMI levels, what would be the subsidy per unit that the city would be paying directly to a landlord of that luxury unit? So what kind of dollars? Let's assume, a typical family experiencing homelessness might have an income. What might be a rent they could afford, and what would be the per month subsidy that the city would be picking up for that unit?
Thanks for that question, Councilman Kniech. I think you could use a variety of different terms, but let's just talk in general purposes that if even a family was doing on a pretty well side of affordable and they could afford like $1,400 a month, that would still leave in your scenario another $1,400 of subsidy to be picked up.
Would that be a family experiencing homelessness typically with ability to pay a $1,400 a month rent?
No, it would not. Usually income support programs or benefits are not substantial enough to make those kinds of rents. In fact, the LIVE program has been for people who are employed and are engaged with employers who are helping with that subsidy as well.
And the LIVE program is still under capacity, is that correct? You've been unable to use the dollars in the way that was intended because you've been unable to match people with rents that are affordable to them, even with the subsidy.
Yeah, right? Bitch, it's what we've been saying, no affordable housing here.
On that contract and are looking at restructuring it.
Thank you very much. So I totally appreciate the desire to find solutions to what seems like an impossible problem. And I will just say that, this is a situation where we have this private market economy where landlords are allowed to sell and rent their units at the maximum price. And, I can't explain all the math about leaving them empty versus renting them at lower rents, but it has something to do with bias against what they think other tenants will think. And it also has something to do with tax write-offs.
One on city council who doesn't read and two now who don't do math.
But I will just say that in our, in the experience of closely watching this program over the last 3 years, I will just say that I don't think it's going to work. And if it were going to work, then we could talk about what the right source is, and then we could talk about what the right amount is. But we have a program almost identical to this proposal that is not working for the reasons I just quickly outlined. There's probably 10 others we don't have time for tonight. But so I will continue to be a champion and try to be creative in finding ways to do housing. There are also some significant trade-offs when you do a rental subsidy program like this.
Like what?
Just use the math. If we subsidize $2,500 a month for a household over the course of a year, we will house that household for $25,000 for a year. Typically, we spend about $50,000 a unit for an affordable.
We spend about 25 grand to sweep
the return
the unhoused.
That level is just totally different.
Each time.
We shouldn't do rental assistance, but it does mean that there are some trade-offs in addition to the concerns that my questions were intended to help talk about. So I can't support this tonight for those reasons, but I do hope that we continue to work on this. And I will just say that if 2B passes, a significant portion of those funds, particularly in the short term, before we get the pipeline sped up, will be for rental subsidies. And that rental subsidy through a voucher program has proven really effective. More effective than this approach of trying to turn over units and master manage them. That has been tried in Denver and it's not working. So those are the reasons why I think we have potentially, depending on tomorrow's results, more voucher dollars could be coming. And we should keep trying to figure out how to make these market solutions work. But unless and until we can, I'm not willing to subsidize luxury landlords. And will say that I'm going to, but then know that there's not the infrastructure to deliver. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Knight. Councilwoman Baca, I see you have.
Then how
your
about
hand
just working
raised
with
again.
affordable housing? How about building some?
Go to Councilwoman Ortega because we haven't heard from her, and we'll come back. Councilwoman Ortega.
Thank you, Madam President. Britta, if you're still on, I have a quick question for you as well. You can come back on. So a lot of the units that are coming online now, and you see a lot of them actually coming out of the ground and they're under construction, that DHA is building this funding that City Council had approved a couple years ago and allowed them to bond the funding, provided the opportunity for them to accelerate the projects that they had underway in Sun Valley, one in the Highlands neighborhood at 33rd and Shoshone, and West Ridge Homes, I believe, is the next one that they'll be working on. But with the ones that are under construction right now, do you know either numbers or percentage of units that they're doing that will be earmarked for the 0 to 30 population? And I apologize, I didn't get this question to you sooner. I just saw the amendment this evening.
Yeah,
You just saw it this evening?
My very fingertips with the searching, I could find that and be happy to follow up.
Where you been?
I would appreciate it. Thank you so much. I have no further questions.
I cannot imagine walking into an board meeting and being like, oh, sorry, I didn't read the documents you got me on Friday. Fill me in.
Some comments that were made about the luxury units. This is not intended at all to mirror the Live voucher. Some of the challenges with the Live voucher were that you needed to have a partnering employer in order to access units. This is not that. This is us taking Trua to the next level. It's very challenging to get someone to lease to you when you don't have proof of income because you're not employed during COVID. And so I think there's a very different circumstance right now. We all know that our federal vouchers were not being taken advantage of because you could, as a landlord, get more money. You could get market rate in Denver for a long time, so it wasn't worth it because you could even go above market rate. We're in a very different circumstance right now because of COVID. People are being put on the list for eviction every single day, and landlords are very concerned about how they will get their rent, how they will fill their units, especially because we don't have a lot of people working. And so this is a solution for 2020. It is something that I believe that we should try. And I have a couple of questions for Ms. Fisher. Can you tell me what % of the city's budget is currently dedicated to host?
I can tell you that $72 million approximately are in the current 2021, just over 70 million.
That's 70 million out of 100 or 1.328 billion dollar budget. So what % of your budget would this amendment be?
So your budget amendment is for $10 million?
Correct.
Okay. So some simple math, a little bit more than 10%.
And so in a city where we have a $1.3 billion budget, this 72 million that we're dedicating to housing doesn't necessarily match the gravity of the crisis we're in.
Nope.
So I'm curious about the amount of money we've spent just this year on homelessness. Can you give me those numbers?
As of, well, there's two different pots of money if you're talking about all of what we've spent on persons experiencing homelessness. So there's our budget, which has about $27 million around there for homelessness resolution. And then you have a portion of our housing budget that is dedicated for supportive housing and usually for it benefits people who are experiencing homelessness. So I'll say several more million there. And then the harder part is that we measure the emergency spend kind of to date. So we've spent more than $30 million of emergency resources in our COVID-19 response on persons experiencing homelessness and the sheltering and housing part of the mission.
And so we've spent $30 million and we haven't put a roof over anyone's head with those 30 million. It's primarily been shelters.
Most of it's been shelters, but a lot of that has to do with the fact that that's what FEMA will fund. Some of the CRF dollars have been used for housing stability purposes like TRUA and mortgage assistance.
Got it. So that I think really addresses that question or comment regarding return on investment. If we've already spent $30 million in 2020 on putting a temporary shelter over someone's head, $10 million isn't a lot to ask to make an opportunity available, to experiment in the middle of a crisis. I appreciate you all taking it into consideration. I appreciate the thoughtful questions. I also want to remind Councilman Hines about the instructions you were very well aware of when we started asking agencies for information during this budget process. You know well that those agencies were instructed not to engage with us. And so I just want to put that out there and make it very clear to address your comments. Thank you.
Thank
Disgusting.
you, Councilwoman Baca. Councilman Hines.
Thank you, Madam President. And Ms. Fisher's point, Ms. Stewart sent an email out today, and I think the shelter services and supplies line item was 41.5 million. So revised upward by a little over 10 million. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilman Hines. Madam Secretary, roll call on Amendment 20-1256 to the Mayor's proposed 2021 budget.
State Baca?
I
love you. Thank you.
No.
Fuck you.
Brendan?
No.
Fuck you.
Hines?
No.
Fuck you.
Cashman?
No.
Fuck you.
Kimage?
No.
Fuck you.
Ortega?
No.
Fuck you.
Sandoval?
Fuck you.
No.
Fuck you twice.
No.
Fuck you.
Torres?
No.
Fuck you.
Flynn?
No.
Fuck you.
Black?
Fuck you.
No.
Madam President?
No.
Fuck all y'all. Except Candi, as always.
Madam Secretary, please announce the results.
Boo!
1 aye, 12 nays.
1 aye, 12 nays. Amendment 1256 to the proposed 2021 budget has failed.
But Candi has not. You know what else has failed? You, council person. Fuck you.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the mayor's proposed 2021 budget be amended in the following particulars. On page 591 in the line titled Police Patrol Districts Division, reduce the amount in the 2021 recommended column by 10 million from 164,685 to 111,064,685. On page 411, in the line titled Housing Stability, increase the amount in the 2021 recommended column by 10 million from 102,293 to 10,102,293 to increase funding for increasing the city's affordable housing portfolio by allowing the city to lease property citywide at affordable rates. Make other appropriate adjustments to comments, tables, schedules, and figures in the mayor's proposed 2021 budget as may be required to reflect the actions in this amendment.
Thank you, Councilwoman Baca. It has been moved. May I get a second, please? Thank you, Councilman Hines. Questions or comments by members of council? Councilmember Baca.
Same goal, same intent here, different tweaks. So probably the same questions that were already answered.
All right, thank you, Councilwoman. Seeing no other questions by our colleagues, Madam Secretary, roll call on Amendment 20-1257 to the Mayor's proposed 2021 budget.
Baca?
Aye.
Clark?
No.
Fuck you.
Flynn?
No.
Fuck you.
Herndon?
No.
Fuck you.
Aye.
No.
Fuck you.
Cashman?
No.
Fuck you.
Kinich?
No.
Fuck you.
Ortega?
Fuck you.
Sandoval?
Fuck you.
No.
Of course. Fuck you.
No.
Fuck you.
Torrance?
No.
Fuck you.
Black?
No.
Fuck you.
Madam President?
No. Madam Secretary, please close the voting and announce the results.
1 aye, 12 nays.
1 aye, 12 nays. Amendment 1257 to the proposed 2021 budget.
To remind us, like, kind of where we are, because some people might not be awake at this point, and I get that. At the beginning of this boring ass meeting, they adopted a resolution reminding people why we needed to help the homeless.
2021 budget be amended in the following particulars. On page 591, in the line titled Police Patrol Districts Division, reduce the amount in the 2021 recommended column by $300,000. On page 411, in the line titled Services and Supplies, increase the amount in the 2021 recommended column by $300,000 from $21,475,162 to $21,775,162 to increase funding for trash collection services for homeless encampments.
$300,000.
Make other appropriate adjustments to comments, tables, schedules, and figures in the mayor's proposed.
Thank you, Councilmember Baca. It has been moved. May I get a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Councilman. Questions or comments by members of council? Councilmember Baca.
Thank you, Madam President. This funding will provide the resources to provide trash services for homeless encampments. We heard from people who testified earlier why it's important and why our unhoused residents aren't entitled to this service. The CDC recommends homeless encampments remain intact during the COVID-19 pandemic to ensure the health and safety of our unhoused residents as well as those around them.
And us.
Allows residents to live with dignity and minimal impact to housed neighbors. This is one of the biggest complaints we receive in my district from housed neighbors. And so this is something that serves both those who have a roof over their head and those who do not. It's an almost imperceptible amount of money that I think could go a long way. So I ask for your support on this one.
Come on!
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Hines.
Thank you, Madam President. I am frustrated with the situation that we're in right now. On the one hand, I've asked the executive branch to engage in at least 3 concepts. First, that we use a data-driven approach to allocating our city's funds. I've asked
We're frustrated too, dude.
Agents to perform an analysis of our 911 data. City Council has performed an analysis. Thank you, central staff. But I haven't heard from safety whether their analysis agrees with council's. We can use that data to ensure that we're allocating our resources wisely. Second, separating police activity from non-police activity in our police budget. It's good policy to know what each budget bucket does, and we can better track the financial impacts and successes when we identify exactly what each line item does. Basically,
so where did dead black people go on the line items?
Social workers and police all in the same bucket. It's hard to understand the role of that one budget line item.
What?
Calculate the cost of each enforcement action on homeless encampments. Housing and homelessness continue to be.
We've been begging for this data.
I recognize that this may not be an exact science because there are people who work on enforcements as only a portion of their full jobs. Still, financial analysts do this sort of work all the time. I used to do that.
We got the numbers.
Quantifying our sweeps gives us the understanding.
Freedom is dear, done did them for you, dude.
Policies, and it also gives us the strength to advocate for other solutions. Basically, if sweeps cost X and this solution costs Y, we can provide additional insight and justification on our policies. Also, businesses understand dollars, so that's one more language that we can use to have discussions with our business counterparts.
What?
I'm frustrated to see that these reports or these requests are still outstanding. That said, I'm also frustrated that we learned about all these amendments on Friday night. That means that we only had today.
Did you have to read them?
Clarity from the affected city agencies about these specific proposals. Even then, some of the proposals are still, the proposals that we heard on Friday night were still ambiguous about funding sources. I'm not actually sure which line item is the services and supplies.
That's because you have to read the document.
Actually,
it ain't complicated.
As a comparison, every other budget amendment that we heard, or that we heard might be coming before us tonight, were proposed at least 2 weeks before, if not even weeks prior to that. So I would also suggest multiple council members have participated in a reimagine of the police that holds weekly meetings. I remain committed to the requests that I have above, and that I've already mentioned, and I remain committed to taking action from the outcome of the requests and citizen-led initiatives. It's just really difficult for me to vote and support when I don't have the opportunity to engage my own constituents, to do my own due diligence, to engage city agencies, or to engage colleagues about.
Haven't you been speaking to them every week at this reimagining police bullshit?
The most pause because we hear a lot of concern about trash services as well. I don't know.
What the fuck?
Again, where I'm sorry. We're reducing patrol. So in the
because we'll have to sweep them less.
Or the proposal we got emailed Friday evening said maybe patrol, maybe DDPHE. I would be more supportive if it were DDPHE than patrol, but I don't have that luxury. So I just want to throw those comments out there. I know that there are some people from District 10 who are watching.
Yep,
and
they're here.
And some of those are very supportive of moving our money from the police budget. I also know that there are people in District 10 who are very supportive of preserving our police budget, and then there are the people in the middle who want to.
Well, thank you for outlining the positions. Never would have guessed it.
Using the phrase "to fund the police," we are reallocating resources, but we do it in a measured way, and it's really difficult to do it in a measured way when we just
in a pandemic, in a global pandemic, in a recession.
But the actual amendments we get Friday evening. After 5
I'm real sorry you didn't have time to prepare for the recession that we're in or the pandemic that we're enduring.
Councilwoman Sawyer.
Fuck you.
Madam President. Councilwoman Cedar Baca, I was actually wondering why you landed on the patrol budget versus DDPHE, because your original email on Friday night had sort of said you were looking at both potential funding sources. So I'm just curious why you landed on one versus the other.
Thank you, Councilwoman Sawyer, and thank you, Councilman Hines. These were actually presented on video in our original amendments that was captured on your Facebook page. But I stuck to this original proposal with police patrol because the DDPHE change on Friday in the email was based on inaccurate data that was sent to me from DDPHE about the $6 million contracts that we had for hazmat cleanup. There was a misunderstanding in what was sent to me, and I was informed this morning by DDPHE that was not that contract's spend down. And so now knowing that we don't actually have a line item in the budget for that $6 million, it didn't make sense to eat into that budget for those allocated dollars. And that is why I returned it to the police patrol district, which was the original proposal in my first amendments multiple weeks ago.
Okay. Is there so in doing the sweeps, is there a third party, like I guess I'm curious about Dottie's role in all of this, and sort of whether you considered maybe looking at Dottie's budget as well. I'm incredibly uncomfortable with the idea of reducing patrol budgets. I know in District 5 there's not enough patrol budget to go around as it is, and reducing that patrol budget is not something I'm comfortable with. It's not something my community wants, and
boo, fuck your community.
Frankly, to help out in different areas of District 5, and so I am very supportive of the idea of finding $300,000 from somewhere to pursue this idea of this trash support, but I am not supportive of the funding mechanism that you chose. And so I'm wondering if there's a different, location, or if, I guess.
Well, where would you want it to come from? How about you give her a suggestion?
Wondering if maybe that was a potential location you had also considered, or if there was a reason why you didn't go that direction.
Yeah, I'd love that.
Thank you, Councilwoman. So part of the issue is what Councilman Hines alluded to in his previous comments. I don't think a single council member on this body has received a full account of the costs of our cleanups or sweeps, as we call them. And there are multiple parties and agencies involved in those sweeps.
That's right. They keep it obtuse for a reason.
Parks and Rec. And so the issue here is that none of us has an accounting of where the dollars are being pulled for, but we know who's present when they happen, and we see all three of those entities present. I believe that if we just took it out of DDPHE, that would not necessarily achieve the goal we're trying to achieve. We're trying to do exactly what Councilman Hines said earlier. We're trying to split the police contact from the contacts that do not require police contact. And if we were proactively addressing the trash situation, instead of waiting till we have a public health hazard and have to implement these large scale or small scale cleanups, they wouldn't be as dangerous as we are told they are. So thus, we would be actually saving police dollars if we were proactive in this way. And that's why I felt this was the most appropriate source of funding to achieve the intended outcome.
Okay, I appreciate your train of thought. I see where you're coming from 100%. I simply don't feel comfortable reducing the patrol budget in order to achieve those goals.
So it's called bad bitch
energy.
energy.
I wish you had chosen a different location to fund from, because I think I would have been able to support it had you done that, but unfortunately can't support it based on where you're pulling from this evening. But thank you for explaining your train of thought on this one. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilwoman Sawyer. Councilwoman Kane.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to briefly speak to this proposal. It was shared several weeks ago.
That's right.
Group budget discussions.
That's right.
Even at that time, it did not price out what you get for the dollars. And I will say that departments have been professional, in my experience, where if you guys are describing a very important exception where they don't have the data on the cost of sweeps. And
that should bother you.
For the requests you've been making for those documentations.
That's a problem.
I will say though that, for example, what would it cost for a truck to do a mobile route, right? What's the cost? How many stops does it make? What would it cost to distribute bags? I do think there are two different ways to approach a budget amendment. There's a way that says, I'm going to pick a number and, then let the administration, figure out what to do with it if it passes. The other approach is to, methodically price out different scenarios and then try to build support for a specific scenario where the service itself is described. So, you describe great flexibility in how the dollars were used, which, I appreciate that that's different than saying, here's a particular thing I'm proposing, which is, a mobile route versus like we've talked about the tension over, you can't necessarily put barrels in the public right of way, and that's going to cause a whole different set of concerns. So I feel like I do think that this area is one that needs our work. And I would just suggest that, if we want to dig in, whether that's at policy committee, that my approach would be to say, let's look at what, if any, other cities have done in terms of providing trash services. Let's price out specific things. And
let's let the crisis continue through the winter and see how many die, because then the budget might balance itself.
That would be the approach I would suggest. Let's think about what the policy implications are. So I do think this area needs more work. But I can't support this proposal as it's written because it doesn't have those pieces in place. And in that case, I frankly don't even know what the administration would do with it. And I would like us to make sure that it's something that we're driving rather than, something where, they then decide how to spend the dollars. I think it's about proposing a specific approach and then pricing that approach. And I think that's the work I would suggest that we take.
Bet you'd still say no.
We're serious about doing this.
Don't even.
We can't support this proposal tonight, but I hope that we can I do believe it's a setup to say to folks, we're not going to provide any trash collection. And in fact, we're going to encourage private parties to lock their dumpsters in the vicinity so that you can't use theirs either. And then say we have to close an encampment because of trash. That is a policy and a practice I don't think is working. It's not been effective for anyone. And
the fuck is she talking about?
This council should lead that conversation. Thank you.
The fuck are you talking about?
Councilwoman Sandoval.
Thank you, Madam President. So Councilman Baca, I've been out there to some of the sites on 7th, 14th, and Logan. And,
when? Who's seen Sandoval out?
And a couple of my constituents who do. They do preparedness for.
If you've seen Sandoval out, I would love a photo or just a testimony.
Those who are experiencing homelessness, and I really do believe that we do need some trash services. I just am confused why the recipient is host. Why are we not giving the money to Dottie? To Councilwoman Kanich's point, wouldn't that create like having Dottie to transfer the money over to host transfer the money over to Dottie? So I'm confused on why host is the recipient of this money. Can you explain that a little further?
Yes, definitely. It's related to what we talked about earlier and how people with physical addresses are not entitled to a trash can. There would have to be some alternative way for us to collect information about where the encampments are or where these people are at. It could be an opportunity for us to make sure we're also deploying services from host to those sites. We thought about, and this Councilwoman Kanich, as you know, in an amendment like this, we don't get to actually spell out how the dollars get used, but this is based on numbers related to how much we've spent historically on trash trucks, Wellness Winnie, and routes. And so what this accounts for is 2 FTEs, as well as the annual cost of operating a single trash vehicle that we would expect to be exclusively dedicated to a route for encampments. And instead of leaving that in Dottie, I thought it would be more appropriate for us to have host be responsible for the accounting and release of these dollars. And we also might have to rent the truck if we don't have any in the fleet that are available to dedicate exclusively to the route. And so it might involve another contractor that I felt host would be more appropriate to manage.
Okay. Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Councilman Baca.
Thank you, Councilman Cashman.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. I won't repeat what my colleagues have said. Not in their entirety. I very much support that this service needs to be provided. I think we need to look at a different source for the funds and be sure that the procedure is fully baked. But it's something we have to move forward with.
Procedure. Thank you for not asking her to raise her goddamn hand this time, son of a bitch.
Thank you, Madam President. I wanted to bring Britta back up for just a quick second to answer a couple of questions. Britta, are you still in the queue?
Yep, we've got her here. Okay, so if she's listening, I'll just start with my first question. So we've got 2 public hearings, or public meetings, I should say, coming up in the community for 2 safe space sites. Those will be happening on the 19th and the 21st of this month. So I wanted to ask, number one, how many people will be expected to be at each of those sites? Number 2, is the city funding one or both of those sites? And
no one's asked how many police are going to be at the sites. You just give them money and don't give a shit.
Part of the operations. That's my first.
Why didn't y'all get this excited about the police budget?
And then I have one other question after that.
Bitch.
Thanks, Councilwoman Ortega. Rick Fisher, Executive Director of the Department of Housing Stability. And a couple of answers to your questions. One, you asked about how many people might be served and for each site. And I know that the target for the sites was around 60 people or less, but I have not seen a site plan or the specific proposal on those 2 sites. As far as any funding, we are currently in an RFP process. So I would take any questions from any proposers tomorrow morning during our question and answer segment, but there is no proposals and no funding decisions have been made.
Okay, so
question was,
RFPs are on both sites or just one site? Just to be
RFP is not specific to a site. It's open to any proposal.
Not ever specific to a site.
For a very managed campsite.
You know this.
And would either bring forward a site themselves that they have secured or want to utilize a city-owned or controlled site.
Okay, so the sites that are on the table for these 2 public meetings are church sites who have offered their locations and starting the community engagement on those, I guess, maybe in prep for.
Why should we pay for it if Christians will do it?
Process, I'm assuming, but
great.
I guess what I'm trying to understand.
I feel awkward about private money going to public money going to private churches.
The Save Our Open Space effort that was underway by the people that did the initial tiny home village.
That did nothing because the mayor didn't come.
Is that their process or is that a
Jesus
process
Christ.
On those 2 locations?
I'm not sure what you're referring to as Save Our Open Space.
Thank you, neither are we.
So this was the group.
Safe Outdoor Space? Is that
Safe Outdoor Space? Yeah, sorry.
Okay. I just want to make sure I was clear.
Thank
but
you.
In general, if the city and the Department of Housing Stability have processes for how we distribute funds, safe outdoor space or temporary managed campsite were not one of the called out things in our notice of funds available that we did in September. And so we did another RFP specifically for the funds that you as council helped to pass in the supplemental budget request. That was $450,000, and we plan to make a portion of our 2021 budget also available for that purpose. And so we were then putting out our city process saying, if you want to access these funds, you need to bring proposals to us through this process.
So through this process, how many sites do we anticipate with the amount of funding that's available will be selected?
Yeah, thanks for that question. You know, it sounds a little
depends on who brings what to the table.
On the proposals.
Yeah.
Right? Like some people may bring their own funds and need only a portion. Others may bring robust city funding. So it's hard for me to say until we see proposals.
Okay, got it. But we expect that whoever will be selected will be expected to provide trash service as part of their operations, correct?
Yes, we're asking in each proposal how they plan to service the site, whether they have all of those services handled, if they have any expectations, partnerships that they're bringing to the site.
Okay, and that may or may not involve the city doing part of that trash pickup, correct?
There may be requests for that service.
Okay. And then lastly, during the really cold weather that we had the last few days, about a week ago, that some of the people who had been sleeping outside actually came into the shelters during that frigid weather.
Thanks for that question. We did have new people come inside, whether or not they had been sleeping rough or had been sleeping elsewhere. We don't have necessarily that segment information for that, but our presumption overall is that when more people come in during a cold weather event, that for many of them it's out of some concern about risk of exposure.
Are we using HMIS to track people when they come into our shelters, even the temporary ones that we've had set up? Okay. All right. Those are all my questions. Thank you very much. Madam Chair, I just wanted to make a brief comment, and that is that I appreciate the work that's been done by my colleagues in efforts to try to address many of the issues that we have all been hearing from the public about, and working towards addressing many of those. And I have to say that the back and forth with the administration and the fact that many of the proposed amendments that would have otherwise been on the agenda tonight got worked out through the dialogue and the interface with the administration. And so between all of the proposals that were brought forward, it's almost $3.5 million in changes to the budget that the mayor originally was not necessarily committing to fund unless it came out of a certain pot. The election fund, but he has agreed to look at other sources. And so the transportation piece, the digital inclusion, the citizen oversight board, the Office of Aging, eviction legal defense fund, restrooms, park restrooms, and the rental
anything but police.
registry,
We'll take it from anything but police.
Almost $400,000 towards the STAR
Fucking
program.
believable.
So those are a lot of the things that people were asking for that are being funded, that will be part of the 2021 budget. And that's a result of a lot of collaborative work. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who worked together to make that happen.
You trying to throw shade at Candi? Fuck you.
Thank you,
Fuck you.
Ortega, and we've been tracking, and the amount of council budget asks that we have been provided by the mayor and his administration is close to 5.2 million. And so that's more than any other city council has been able to secure. And so thank you for running through those, Councilman Ortega. Madam Secretary, please, let's go to roll call on amendment 20-1.
Time for the fuck yous.
58 to the mayor's proposed 2021. Please.
Cita Baca?
Aye.
Love you.
Clark?
No.
Fuck you.
Flynn?
No.
Fuck you.
Brendan?
No.
Fuck you.
Hines?
No.
Fuck you.
Cashman?
No.
Just fuck you.
Kinich?
No.
Fuck you for real.
Ortega?
No.
Fuck you.
Sandoval?
No.
Fuck you.
Sawyer?
No.
Fuck you.
Torrance?
No.
Fuck you.
Black?
No.
Fuck you.
Madam President?
No. Madam Secretary,
Fuck
please
you.
close the voting and announce the results.
1 aye, 12 nays.
1 aye, 12 nays. Amendment 1258 to the proposed 2021 budget.
Yeah, there's an echo
failed.
because I'm in here and the TV's on, so people can hear things other than me.
This is your
It just
fifth
felt
and
like the
last
right thing to do.
amendment to the budget. It's item 20-1259.
Thank you, Madam President. And as you mentioned, it is our last one because the star one is no longer on here. So I move
Fuck you
that
for
the
pulling
mayor's
it off.
proposed 2021 budget be amended in the following particulars. On page 323 in the line titled Executive Office, reduce the amount in the 2021 recommended column by $1 million from $2,404,988 to $1,404,988. On page 323 in the line titled Business Development Division, reduce the amount in the 2021 recommended column by $1 million from $2,045,509 to $1,045,509. On page 323 in the line titled Neighborhoods, increase the amount in the 2021 recommended column by $2 million from $1,430,639 to $3,430,639 to increase funding for a cooperative investment fund. Make other appropriate adjustments to comments, tables, schedules, and figures in the mayor's proposed 2021 budget as may be required to reflect the actions in this amendment.
Thank you, Councilwoman. May I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilman Hines. Questions or comments by members of council?
Thank you,
Councilwoman Zeta Baca.
Thank you, Madam President. Capital and overhead are the primary barriers to folks starting and keeping businesses alive. With COVID, we've witnessed people step up and create businesses, making masks, meals, daycares, etc. And now's the time to invest in collectives or cooperatives instead of single owner entities. We currently do not do that as a city, and this is an entire slice of economic opportunity that is being missed, truly. And this is the right time to pivot. This culture of sharing will multiply our investments in the long term and help us to strengthen our local supply chain in the case of future crises like the COVID-19 virus that disrupted our supply chains, not only locally, but globally.
Thank you, Councilwoman Zeta Baca. I'm not seeing any other hands raised for questions. Oh, Councilmember.
No discussion. We're all just going to say no.
Thank you, Madam President. Sometimes I have a hard time finding the button.
Why is it you that has to
I
speak?
see that Eric Haraga is here in the attendees. Is he available to come forward for a question? And can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
There's some sound difficulties too.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Hear you just fine, and we'll go ahead and get Eric moved up.
Hello, thank you.
Hi, Mr. Haraga. I wanted to ask first of all about what the source involved in this amendment has to would impact specifically, and then if we can talk more about. I'll have some more questions after that. But first, you want to just clarify the source?
Sure. More broadly, our budget request is for $7.6 million for 2021. So $2 million change to that. It's about 26% of our entire budget. So as we look at our personnel budget versus the programs and services, the impact would be about 18 to 20 FTEs if you look at the personnel side. If you look at the programmatic side, that would be about 85% reduction in the programs that we offer. That's across all the divisions, whether it's workforce, business development, DSBO, and so forth.
Okay. So when we discussed this one, as we did as a council, I shared that I did not think the source was viable. I didn't think it was likely to get support from the council or the mayor, but that I was very interested in the cooperative piece. And I know that the department has put its toe in the water in a mild way, but failed to actually move forward with more robust policy or investments in this area. So would you like to talk a little bit about where we are today, or, you know, and particularly I think there was a partial staffer or there was some funding going. Is any of that still in existence? But what's our baseline here on the co-op talking?
So we have had success with Kamal Kitchen. We did provide financial assistance for Kamal. We are moving forward with a $50,000 contribution for Rocky Mountain Employee Ownership Council to provide technical assistance for entities that are looking to grow in this space. But as we talk about sources and uses, this is an area that we do support, that we want to, we recognize the value and we want to explore this further. In terms of sources and uses, we do have some federal dollars that we believe that can come into play.
Have you ever, my sense of the business investment fund, where we do some of our subsidies to business attraction, are that funding source probably would not be eligible for most typical co-op entities. They probably wouldn't be able to meet the criteria. Is that accurate?
Yes, I believe so. I think our CDBG resources would be more appropriate.
Have you ever evaluated whether or not that you could or should put aside a separate investment fund that is more appropriate for these size and types of businesses that they could qualify for themselves? I'm curious about continuing to refer to the federal dollars. We don't only use federal dollars for creation of other types of businesses. Why would we only use federal dollars?
Well, no, I don't think we've anticipated having a specific carve out for cooperatives, but I believe, if there is a proposal, if through our partnership with Rocky Mountain Employee Ownership Council, they have a client and they submit a proposal, that's something that we would evaluate.
Well, I guess I would say, I see there being 3 missed opportunities on this topic right now. And I shared at the earlier meeting, I don't think this is the right source. I don't think it's going to make it through the process. So I just, this amendment is not going to pass tonight, but I think it's a critical topic. And I think that the 3 missed opportunities that I see is, number 1, specifically having eligible pools of funds for specific cooperative businesses to access. So it's not the BIF, which is where our largest investment of dollars is. So there needs to be less going into the BIF and something going into a different fund, but there needs to be a capital source for specific businesses. Number 2, there needs to be, hopefully I don't know enough about the Rocky Mountain Employee Ownership, but it sounds like there needs to be an investment in the strategy, which is the technical assistance and the services that these businesses need that are not so much the startup costs, but more of the technical type things. So maybe that's going to fill that gap. But the third piece, and frankly, I think this is the biggest missed opportunity in Denver, and it's not about your philanthropic type investment dollars. It's more about creating demand and actual products and services that co-ops can deliver. And so the specific strategy I've seen in other cities is for example, we have some city employees who have to wear uniforms. The laundering of those uniforms could be done by a co-op. Cafeteria or food services, where there are portions of our city that deliver food, those services. So it's about actually putting real dollars on the table as a contracting strategy. That was supposed to be a discussion of a prior generation of staff several years ago. It never, to my knowledge, saw the light of day. Do you have any updates on that particular strategy and any proposals that are forthcoming on that I might not have heard about?
No, I would not say that there's a current proposal on deck, obviously with our budget reductions and our constraints, but I agree with you. This is an area where we should have a strategy and that we should explore more for 2021.
Yeah, and I would just say, other than some technical dollars, that third strategy isn't necessarily costly to the city. It's a service we are buying anyway. Right now we're buying it from a multinational corporation, or we're buying it from some other business model. And instead, we could be committed to buying it from a cooperative to create an inducement, right? And again, except for maybe some technical or startup dollars, we would be spending those dollars anyway. So it's a less budget impacting strategy, and it's been pursued by many cities. And I know for a fact it might have even been under a prior director. So it's been an idea that I'm not sure has been presented to you specifically. But I will just say that these are some of the ways that I think that we can and should pursue this conversation. I'm passionate about this model of business creation and employee ownership. And so I do think that I would love to see the department, continue to evaluate within the staff that you have. So if I vote no on this amendment tonight, my expectation is the Turin Nagel case bolts of your staff and the others who do business investment are thinking about what kinds of funding sources you guys can make specifically available to these businesses with the dollars you have or with future dollars that you request. I'm going to ask that the folks who do, the interdisciplinary work from your SBE and DBE office, they are already engaging with other departments about small business contracting. There is no reason that division could not be leveraged to create specific conversations about which city contracts might lend themselves to a co-op approach. And then what kind of grants we could be pursuing. We have city grant writers who could be leveraged to do that. So I guess my ask to you is, it's likely this is not going to be passed tonight, but would you spend some energy using the divisions that you have to think about these 3 different strategies?
Fucking
and then,
kidding me.
I don't know what ideas Rocky Mountain Employee Ownership will come up with for you, but to think about ways that this division
Had you thought about
better,
other people you could ask before coming here?
catalyst for this type of, wealth building opportunity.
Yes, I agree. I think it's a citywide conversation. I'd be happy to engage with city council and the community to explore this further. It does go similar to our DSBO and WBE portfolio. We're trying to expand those opportunities, but just take the city and I'll talk to my counterparts in procurement, and it is something we can explore.
And I just want to be really clear, this is not an either or from minority business set-asides. The difference is just the type of minority business. Many co-ops are owned by people of color, women, by those from immigrant backgrounds. And in fact, they are just attracted because this is a way to be less capital intensive. Instead of needing your own capital, you can pool capital among a group of folks. Kamal is an example of that. So I hope that your division doesn't think of it as an either or. We either do this as a minority contract or we do it as a co-op contract. In many cases, the owners of co-ops can be the very same types of business owners. They just need a different model. And in many cities, what they've done is created a closed bidding environment. So I am appreciative of my colleague for raising this conversation so that we can have more light on this topic and we can perhaps focus on it more as a city. And I appreciate the answers to the questions and the willingness to spend more time engaging. I think it's never going to happen unless there is prioritization and strategy put behind it, particularly policy, not just dollars. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Kanich. Councilwoman Ortega, we're going to go to you.
Okay, thank you. Eric, if you're still there. Can you tell me if the DITO has funding into the Other Side Academy that started up their moving company as part of their business operation?
We do not. We had explored it, but did not work out.
Okay. But that doesn't mean you wouldn't consider something like that if we moved more towards our shelters and our community correction facilities, incorporating social enterprises into their operations. Is that correct?
Absolutely. We were really interested in the model. There was just a little bit of inflexibility with the way we could use the funds, and we decided to move in a different direction.
And was that the business investment fund, or was that CDBG funds?
CDBG fund.
Okay, so I think to the point that Councilwoman Kanich was making earlier, where we have greater flexibility with investment funds, which I'm assuming include some of our general fund dollars, correct?
If we had more general fund dollars, I think the flexibility really comes towards the federal side of our portfolio.
Yeah, okay. Because I think the issue of trying to, I mean, we had a gentleman who spoke earlier who talked about, the need to get back to work and just having the stability. I think, the one thing that we have not been talking about is making sure, and I hope that Britt is still on.
The one thing?
Is
the one thing we've not been talking about,
people
really?
who live in
The one
shelter
thing?
system that get up and go to work every day, whether they're working a night shift or a day shift. But, you know, creating the opportunity that matches, number one, having facilities that are working shelters, if you will, you know, for that segment of our population. And then making sure that we're creating job opportunities for individuals who want to go back to work, but they need that stability of having a place where they can sleep, having a place where they can do their laundry, you know, so they can show up to work fresh, all those kinds of things, because there's really something magical about people being able to get back to work that makes them feel like they're, you know, a contributing member of society, and it's, you know, that feeling of self-worth as well. And so I think marrying those pieces is really critical to a lot of the work that we're doing around homelessness. And I mean, I appreciate the efforts that happen by creating a greater focus on housing when we segregated housing away from DITO. But at the same time, the job piece and the housing piece are so integral in people being successful in getting back into, you know, being a productive member of society and being successful in remaining in their housing. Because if all we're doing is housing people and we're not addressing some of those other issues, people deal with isolation, they deal with, you know, feeling guilty that their friends are still living outside when they have a unit. And so that job piece is just so critical. So I would just ask that we continue this conversation and look at how we make this happen. And Councilwoman Baca, I appreciate you bringing this issue forward. And, you know, whether it's in what we call co-ops or how we do this in a different way where we're using some of our economic development dollars that truly support people who need that help. I mean, we've been successful. One of the programs that the city has put money into is the Work Now program, which has been very successful. And those are livable wage jobs, really helping people to get back on their feet. And, you know, it's providing, helping cover part of the cost for the training on that. So the more I think we can do in this area, the more successful we're going to be in helping people who are living outside or who are living in our shelter system. So anyway, just wanted to share that. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilman Ortega. Councilwoman Baca?
Thank you, Madam President. Just a couple clarifications and questions. One, Comal is not a cooperative. It is a social enterprise of a nonprofit.
That's right.
Two, Work Now does not pay a livable wage.
That's
Most
right.
people in Work Now can't even get enough hours to pay rent. My questions are actually about the Business Incentives Fund and what we're spending it on right now during COVID. How did we spend it now in 2020? Mr. Haraga?
Yes, I'll have to ask Matthew Carnes, who's on standby on my finance team. I do not have those numbers on me.
Do we have him in the meeting, Eric, or is that?
I hope you're laughing at what I think you're laughing at.
Oh, I guess I'll have to get it later. I thought he was on standby. My apologies, Councilwoman.
I'm on here. Can you hear me?
Oh, good.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Let me turn on video real quick. Sorry about that. Hi, Matthew Carnes, COO for DITO. Yeah, so I don't have the exact list of all of if there's been any new business incentives that have been approved this year, but I can tell you that $1.5 million early on in the year was shifted from our BIF funds into the emergency relief funds. So $1.5 million of our funds, another $2 million from the general fund were combined early this year to help with the COVID emergency, and that's part of our small business emergency relief grant, where each of our small businesses were getting up to $7,500 in grants. So $1.5 million this year was used specifically for the emergency.
And what would prevent us from what this is not actually taking money from DITO. This is trying to shift the work that DITO is doing, because we can't do business development in the same way. And so I'm wondering what would prevent us from passing this amendment to carve out that specific fund for cooperatives, and then utilize those funds, deploy those funds to do cooperative investment and reimburse for COVID relief.
So I'll take my approach to that. So these 16 or 18 to 20 FTEs, in lieu of to be able to finance the $2 million, these are people in workforce development, business development, the executive office with accounting jobs, compliance jobs. We just can't really repurpose that skill set to be able to support cooperatives. My understanding, $1 million for wages is you want to see programmatic support, grant support, financing support for them. So it isn't as easy as just moving it from one pile to the other without a sacrifice.
And so with the business incentive fund, do we plan to keep those allocated toward small business relief grants for 2021? Or will those revert back to business incentives for your typical large corporations?
I believe that there is some governance over how those funds can be used, so they aren't very flexible. We were able to use it in this emergency instance. So far, we have not been having any discussions of transferring the BIF over towards COVID relief for 2021.
So what will it look like, or what will it be spent on in a situation where COVID is extended and quarantines continue and we're not naturally attracting businesses even with an incentive?
Nope.
I think that's a question for finance, but an example of how those funds have been used for the past was with BF Corporation, aka North Face, where they dedicated so many jobs to relocate in Denver. So Target downtown, I believe, is another example. So those are the type of projects that we would look to, where Denver is benefiting from additional jobs.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Flynn?
Oh, Jesus. Flynn woke up.
How many people are employed in the executive office?
What?
Let's see. I don't have the number count with me.
I had it up in front of me here earlier.
Fucking cares?
It's around 20, but it depends on general fund versus federal.
Right. Correct. Yeah. Yes. And how many
Go back to bed, Flynn. Jesus Christ.
If you include workforce, I think it's more substantial, 45 or 50 people.
Okay, thank you. Madam President, I think I very much would support the goal of to which the funds would be put.
The fuck you would!
The $1 million
you racist motherfucker!
Coming from the Executive Office and Business Development Division, because that would, at least it appears to me, it would require laying off most of the people who work in DITO in those two divisions. And if we could explore other sources of funds, I think this is something very well worth pursuing in cooperation with the agency, of course. Thank you.
Thank you for that pathetic attempt to remain relevant. You can go back to bed now.
Thank you, Madam President. And to address that comment, the intent was not to lay anybody off. It was to shift the work within DITO to a more appropriate way to invest in our local businesses instead of trying to court people to come to town to make jobs when we've got jobs here and we can do them ourselves through this model.
Get him!
Councilman Baca. Seeing no other questions or comments, Madam Secretary, roll call on Amendment 20-1259.
Is it really hard to be in a group where you're like dumber than a brown woman? Is that like really hard for y'all?
Clark,
No.
Fuck you.
Quinn,
No.
Fuck you.
Herndon,
No.
Fuck you.
Hines,
No.
Fuck you.
Cashman,
No.
Fuck you.
Kinich,
No.
Fuck you.
Ortega,
A reluctant no.
Does that get a fuck you? I think it does. Fuck you.
No.
Fuck you.
Sawyer,
No.
Fuck you for not even trying.
Morris,
No.
Fuck you.
Black,
No.
Oh, just fuck you. I don't even need to hear it.
Madam President.
Fuck you. The hardest. Thank you.
Council Secretary, please announce the results.
Once again, 11 races have trumped the one person who gives a shit's ability to get things done. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yay.
Has this failed? Are there any other amendments to the budget by my colleagues? I'll ask you to raise your hand if you have one. Seeing none, on Monday, November 9th, council will vote to either adopt or reject the mayor's proposed 2021 budget. Madam Secretary, please read the bills for introduction.
From Land Use, Transportation, and Infrastructure, 201059, a bill for an ordinance approving a proposed fourth amendatory agreement between the City and County of Denver and Country Club Gardens Investments, LLC, for development.
Country Club Gardens? Really?
2011-23, a bill for an ordinance changing the zoning classification.
Did I hear that correctly?
2483 South Josephine Street in University
Country Club motherfucking Gardens.
2011-24,
On Josephine Street.
zoning classification for 1634 Athena Street in East Colfax. 2011-32, a bill for an ordinance approving and accepting the East Area Plan, which plan shall become a part of the Comprehensive Plan 2040 for the City and County of Denver pursuant to the provisions of Section 12.
If you're not familiar with that part of town, it's because you can't fucking afford it.
2011-43, a bill for an ordinance approving a proposed interagency agreement between the City and County
Between
of Denver
Cherry Creek and the Botanic Gardens, the Cherry Creek Mall and the Botanic Gardens.
to lease well water to supply Harvey Park Lake and allow for the installation of an aquifer storage and recovery.
I'm real glad our priorities are in order here.
2011-62, a bill for an ordinance changing the zoning classification for 2580.
You know, week after week, this poor lady, she's young, but she's something demeaning, didn't mean to. This young lady has to read all this shit.
Ordinance approving a proposed amendment to intergovernmental agreement.
I feel for
between
you.
the City and County of Denver
This
and
feels
the State of
wrong.
Colorado, Department of Human Services, Division of Youth Services.
We want diversity, so we're going to hire a brown person to read all the shit that we do. Yay, us!
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Council members, this is your last opportunity to call out an item.
It's your last opportunity to pile on candy, y'all. Get in there.
Yes, I will,
Fuck
Council
you.
President.
Thank
Not you. I
I'll
love
do
you.
a
I'm
recap.
sorry.
Under resolutions, no items have been called out.
But
Under
they
bills
might as
for
well just say
introduction,
it.
No items have been called out. Under bills for final consideration, Councilmember Seda Baca has called out Council Bill 1106.
Yeah, she's called out many things, and y'all continue to ignore them
The
all.
first item up is Bill 1106. Councilmember Seda Baca, will you please put Council Bill 1106 on the floor for final passage?
Yes, Madam President, I move that Council Bill 20-1106 be placed upon final consideration and do pass.
Second.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded by Councilman Herndon.
Herndon's here?
Questions or comments from
When that happened?
Council? Councilmember Seda Baca?
Thank you, Madam President. We spoke about this one at length last time. Don't want to beat a dead horse, but definitely want to go on record as a no. I don't want to accelerate our debt issuance at a time like this, and I will be a no tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Thank you, Candy.
Madam Secretary, roll call.
Seda Baca,
No.
Clark,
All right.
You're such a fucking dickwad. What the fuck is wrong with you?
Hines,
Fuck, of course you are. Fuck you.
Aye.
Fuck you.
Kinich,
Aye.
Fuck you.
Ortega,
Fuck you. Yes to the developers, no for poor people. Procedure.
Aye.
Fuck you all. Useless pieces of garbage.
Aye.
Yeah, Brian, you need to run.
Aye.
Black.
Aye.
Fuck you.
Madam President.
Aye. Madam Secretary, please close the voting and announce results.
1 nay, 12 ayes.
One nay, 12 ayes. You hear that?
Council Bill 1106 has passed.
I'm so glad Country Club on Josephine's going to get whatever they
All
want.
bills for introduction
Again.
are ordered published. Council members, please remember, this is a consent or block vote, and you will need to vote aye. Otherwise, this is your last chance.
I want to
call
revoke
on
my
the
consent for y'all to do this shit. How about that?
Councilmember Baca, will you please put the resolutions for adoption and the bills on final consideration for final passage on the floor?
Madam President, I am having a challenge opening the SharePoint with the list of them.
If you open up the script and scroll down, I believe they've been placed in the script.
They are not. It is referring me to the SharePoint, and so I can dig this up. But if the clerk has it available, I think it would be a little bit faster if she could read them.
Okay, sounds good. Council Secretary, would you like to read them or would you prefer me?
I can go ahead and read them. We will place the resolutions for adoption, bills on final consideration, and due pass for 2012-20, 2011-35, 2011-36, 2011-37, 2011-39, 2011-40, 200962, 2011-20, 2011-42, 2011-69, 2010-83, 2011-25, 2011-45, 2011-85, 2011-86, 2011-10, 2010-70, 2010-90, 2010-91, 2010-92, 2010-93, 2010-94, 2010-95, 2010-96, 2010-97, 2010-98, 2010-99, 2011-100, 2011-01, 2011-02, 2011-03, 2011-04, 2011-05, 2011-16, 20-0855, and 2010.
And I move that those listed resolutions be adopted and bills on final consideration placed upon final consideration. And in a block for the following.
Thank you, Councilwoman Seda Baca. Terry, roll call, please.
Aye. Black. Seda Baca.
Aye.
Aye.
Flynn.
Aye.
Brendan.
Aye.
Kyle.
Aye.
Cashman.
Aye.
Kinich. Ortega.
Aye.
Sandoval.
Aye.
Sawyer.
Aye.
Torres.
Aye.
Madam President.
Aye. Madam Secretary, please close the voting and announce the results.
13 ayes.
13 ayes. The resolutions have been adopted and the bills have been placed upon final consideration and do pass. Tonight, there will be a required public hearing on Council Bill 965, changing the zoning classification for 4714 North Bryant Street, a required public hearing on Council Bill 983, changing the zoning classification for 1790 South Humboldt Street, and a required public hearing on Council Bill 984, changing the zoning classification for 2520 South Marion Street. Anyone wishing to speak on any of these matters must go online to sign up during the recess of council. If there are no objections from members of council, we will take a 10-minute recess. Council members, please remember to turn off your cameras and mute your microphones, and we will return at 7:42 p.m.
Mute your microphone before I tell them what pieces of shit they are. I'd hate for them to hear it. I hate everybody except you. Oh my God. We'll be back.
Well, technically, most people, this is what I understand. I just don't think you should. I mean, sorry,
Candy's leaving, so I have to move. Yep. It is. You know, I try to keep it fun and lively, entertaining at the very least. Thank you. I love you more. Thank you so much for coming here and supporting Candi. I say get up here quick. Get up here quick. I'm not leaving. They just say I can't keep my stuff up here.
I wish I had the luxury of council.
Love them. Where is?
Does anybody need an escort?
I'm not necessarily moving if everybody else wants to. I get it. That's a big part of the night.
You want to talk?
How was it outside?
So the problem with the 16th Street Mall is a $50 billion marketplace. So we just tax them a little bit more and take their own something. They're the ones who push it. And you know, I say nothing for her. Yeah, and you see what my mom's.
We have 3 public hearings tonight. Speakers should begin their remarks by telling the council their names and cities of residence, and if their home addresses. When called upon, please wait until our meeting host promotes you to speaker. When you are promoted, your screen will flash and say "Reconnecting to meeting." Please do not leave the meeting. You will be reconnected and you'll need to turn on your camera if you have one and your microphone. If you signed up to answer questions only, state your name and note you are available for questions of council. Speakers will have 3 minutes. There is no yielding of time. You will see your time flash on the screen when you have 30 seconds left. Speakers must stay on the topic of the hearing and must direct their comments to the council members. Please refrain from profane or obscene speech. Direct your comments to council as a whole, and please refrain from individual or personal attacks. Council member State Baca, would you please put Council Bill 965 on the floor for passage?
Yes, Madam President, I move that Council Bill 20-0965 be placed upon final consideration and be passed.
Thank you. It has been moved. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. The required public hearing for Council Bill 20-0965 is open. May we please have the staff report?
Yes, hello.
I guess that was just unwarranted.
Council President, are you able to hear me?
Yay, I'm going to go home and do the rest of this from here since everybody's leaving. See y'all later.